The courthouse steps were packed with reporters, a celebratory crowd for what I thought was our second chance. Elaine stood beside me, but when David Peterson stepped forward, she took his arm. Not mine, the cameras flashed, sealing my public humiliation. David leaned close to my ear, his voice a low sneer. She made her choice, Miller. Best you remember that. The glow of the monitor reflected faintly in my bifocals. I was staring down a particularly convoluted copyright infringement, another digital ghost haunting my firm's client. The details were tedious, the bureaucratic process glacial. It was a Tuesday morning, typically uneventful, but a persistent unease had settled in my stomach since dawn. The office hummed around me, a familiar low thrum of productivity. Brenda Hayes, my assistant, appeared in the doorway of my private office, her posture indicating something out of the ordinary. "Art," she began, her voice modulated to a professional calm. "There's a young lady asking to see you." She insisted it was urgent and personal. I leaned back in my chair, adjusting my tie. "Sarah Peterson," Brenda said. The name registered, a faint prickle on my skin. Peterson. It had been years. She wouldn't elaborate, but she brought this. Brenda held out a small, framed photograph. Even from a distance, the sepia tones spoke of age. I took it, my fingers brushing hers. The image solidified the dread. It was a wedding photo, faded at the edges, capturing a younger version of myself, stiff in a rented tuxedo. Beside me, radiant and smiling, was Elaine, my ex-wife. The date inscribed on the back confirmed it. June 12, 19 years ago. 18 years to be exact. Almost 2 decades gone. My stomach tightened. "All right, Brenda," I said, handing the photo back to her. My voice was level, betraying nothing. "If she identifies herself as Sarah, please show her the video file on the USB stick labeled Peterson Protocol MP4 on my desk. Don't say anything, just play it. Then bring her in." Brenda nodded, her eyes briefly flicking to the USB drive I indicated. Her efficiency was a blessing. Minutes later, she returned, her usual composure somewhat ruffled. "She's quite shocked." "Art," Brenda reported, her voice hushed. She confirmed her name is Sarah. After the video finished, she just sat there, quiet. Then she said, "I've been deceived my whole life. She's ready to come in now." "Send her in," I instructed, my gaze fixed on the empty chair opposite my desk. The video contained a recording of Elaine, taken shortly before our first divorce hearing. It was a private moment, captured without her knowledge, a precaution I'd taken. Her words had been clipped, laden with a cruel satisfaction. "You think you know everything, Art," she'd said, her eyes cold. "There are some secrets even you won't uncover. Some ties are stronger than any marriage certificate." I hadn't understood the full implication then, dismissed it as spite. Now, with Sarah Peterson in my office, a different interpretation emerged. David Peterson. The name resonated with a bitter familiarity. He was the man who had pulled strings, quietly but effectively, ensuring my dismissal from the FBI nearly 2 decades prior. The official reason was conduct unbecoming, a trumped-up charge that masked the true motive. He'd wanted me out of the picture, not just professionally, but personally. Elaine had been his mistress, a fact I'd uncovered too late. The divorce had been swift, brutal. Within 6 months, she had married David. The transition had been seamless, almost orchestrated. Sarah Peterson entered, clutching the old wedding photo. She was young, perhaps 19 or 20, with Elaine's striking blue eyes, though tempered by an earnestness I hadn't seen in my ex-wife. She placed the photo on my desk, her gaze direct. "I found this," she began, her voice steady despite the obvious strain, "tucked away in my mother's old things. This and a marriage certificate for you and her, and then the divorce papers, dated just a few months before her marriage to David Peterson, my father. She paused, took a shallow breath. I thought David was my father, my twin sister Hannah's father. But that's not possible, is it? I remained silent, allowing her to continue. My mind was already piecing together the timeline. The evidence. Hannah is sick, Sarah continued, her voice cracking slightly. Leukemia. She needs a bone marrow transplant. We're identical twins, but even I'm not a perfect match. They ran DNA tests, parental tests, everything. Just to be sure. They said David Peterson isn't our biological father. Her eyes searched mine, pleading for an explanation, for confirmation of what the video had implied. They said our mother must have had 2 relationships at the time. The dates, the records, it all points to you. The quiet moral tension in the room was palpable. My long-suppressed suspicions, dismissed as paranoia, were now laid bare as factual findings. The cold realism of the situation demanded immediate action. Brenda, I called out, not looking away from Sarah. Arrange an immediate DNA test. For Sarah and myself. Priority 1, confidential. I want results within 48 hours if possible. Brenda's quick. Yes. Art came from her office. I then turned my attention to the USB drive still on my desk, the one containing Elaine's confession. And Brenda, prepare the information on this USB for publication. An anonymous drop. No direct link back to this firm. Or to me. Make sure it's untraceable. My gaze returned to Sarah. Her face was pale, but a flicker of hope, desperate and fragile, had entered her eyes. Sarah, I stated, my voice firm. Where is Hannah receiving treatment? St. Jude's, she whispered. Brenda, I said again, my voice carrying conviction. Clear my schedule. I need to visit Hannah. Sarah Peterson walked into my office again, clutching the old wedding photo. She moved with a certain deliberate grace, her shoulders squared. This time, I saw beyond Elaine's eyes, her chin, the set of her jaw, the way her hair fell. It was Carol, my younger sister, Carol. The resemblance was undeniable, almost jarring in its precision. The faint freckles dusting her nose, the slight curve of her smile, even in distress, echoed my sister's youthful features. It was a mirror reflecting a shared ancestry I hadn't known existed in this form. I stood, moving from behind my desk, a gesture I rarely made for visitors. Sarah, I said, my voice softer than I intended. She met my gaze, the blue of her eyes welling up. It's true, isn't it? She whispered. I nodded, unable to speak past the unexpected constriction in my throat. The quietude of the office was suddenly profound. A single tear tracked its way down my cheek. Then another. Sarah's chin trembled, and she, too, began to cry silently. It wasn't a sob, not a breakdown, but a profound release of something held taut for nearly 2 decades, for her, a lifetime. Brenda, ever present and discreet, quietly stepped in, her camera phone already raised. She took a few quick, almost professional photos capturing the raw, shared moment without intrusion. Evidence. Brenda's voice broke the silence, calm and efficient. Art, Sarah, the DNA test is scheduled for 2 o'clock this afternoon. Confidential. We'll use the lab downtown, off Elm Street. They're expecting you both. Thank you, Brenda, I managed, clearing my throat. My gaze was still fixed on Sarah. The physical evidence of shared sorrow was as compelling as any document. And for lunch, Brenda continued, shifting gears seamlessly. I've made a reservation at Sells, a family restaurant. For you, Sarah, and Carol. It's on Main Street, close to the lab. I've already called Carol. She'll meet us there around 1. Sells. A familiar, unassuming diner we'd frequented since childhood. known for its consistent menu and booths worn smooth by generations of local families. It felt appropriate. Sarah and I left the office shortly after, the weight of the morning's revelations pressing down. We drove to Sells in my car, the silence between us less awkward now, more contemplative. It was a late lunch. She hadn't eaten since before her long drive. "You came a long way," I observed, watching her across the table as she picked at a club sandwich. "All the way from out west?" "Oregon," she confirmed. "Drove straight through once I found everything. Had to know." She took a gulp of water. "Didn't think about much else." I nodded. That impulsive, driven streak, ignoring practicalities for a singular objective. It was a trait I recognized. I'd done similar things in my youth, chasing a hunch or a lead, fueled by little more than a sense of conviction. When we arrived at Sells, Carol was already there, tucked into a corner booth. I saw her familiar wave. "Sarah," I said, placing a hand gently on her arm. "Wait here for a moment. I'll talk to Carol first." I walked over to my sister, who smiled warmly. "Art, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's all this about an emergency lunch?" I looked back at Sarah, then to Carol. "Carol," I began, my voice low. "I need you to prepare yourself. This is going to be unexpected." I paused, then gestured. "There's someone I want you to meet." I brought Sarah over. Carol's smile faltered, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. Her eyes, identical in color to mine, widened as she took in Sarah's face. It was instantaneous recognition. The way Carol's hand flew to her mouth, the almost imperceptible gasp she let out. "Oh my God," Carol breathed, tears springing to her eyes. "Art. She looks just like." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The mirror image of herself, a younger echo, was standing before her. "This is Sarah Peterson," I supplied, letting the name hang in the air. "Peterson?" Carol's voice was a ragged whisper. Her eyes, still wide with shock and confusion, flicked between Sarah and me. "But she looks like one of us. Like me." Tears began to flow freely now. But a different kind of tears than mine or Sarah's earlier. These were tears of astonishment, of impossible recognition. "We need a bigger table, Art. Get a bigger table. And I need to call Mom and Dad. And Bob." She pulled out her phone, already dialing with trembling fingers. "This is an emergency. A real emergency." As Carol spoke to Bob, then Mom and Dad, her voice wavering with emotion, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from Brenda. Publisher confirmed. Information released. Expect coverage on 6 News tonight. The wheels were in motion. The long-dormant truth now. A public missile. It wasn't long before Bob Miller, Carol's husband, arrived, followed by our parents, Eleanor and George. George, ever the pragmatist, grumbled as he approached the expanded table Carol had secured. "Emergency? What kind of emergency warrants pulling me away from my fishing tackle inventory, Carol?" Carol, ignoring his usual complaints, turned to George and Eleanor, her face still streaked with tears but radiating a profound joy. She gestured to Sarah, her voice thick with pride and awe. "Mom, Dad. This is Sarah, Elaine's daughter." Eleanor, who had paused mid-step, her eyes already on Sarah, gasped. An old woman's gasp, full of recognition. She didn't need further explanation. The resemblance, the undeniable familial echo, hit her like a physical force. Her face crumpled with a mixture of overwhelming emotion, shock, sadness, but mostly an incandescent joy. George, usually quick with a quip, stood silent for a long moment. He looked from Sarah to Carol, then to me, then back to Sarah. His brow furrowed, his mouth opened and closed. "Well, he finally managed, his voice gruff. "She certainly looks like a Miller. But Elaine's daughter?" After all these years? The belief struggled to take root in his logical mind. Eleanor, however, had already reached for Sarah's hand. She gripped it tightly. Her gaze locked on Sarah's face. Her lips moved, but no words came out, only a silent, profound understanding passing between them. George, usually reserved with his emotions, leaned back in the booth, a broad, unfamiliar grin spreading across his face. Celeste, he boomed across the diner, attracting the attention of the owner. Another bottle of your finest, and another round of glasses. This calls for a celebration. His pride was evident, a slow burn of vindication lighting up his eyes. I stood, holding my own half-finished glass, and cleared my throat. The attention of my family, and a few curious glances from other diners, settled on me. I met Sarah this morning, I began, keeping my voice even, factual. She came to my office with an old wedding photo, one of Elaine and me. She explained she found it, along with our marriage certificate and divorce papers. This led her to believe David Peterson, her supposed father, was not her biological father. As I spoke, Sarah pulled out her phone, holding it discreetly to record my words. Her gaze was steady, absorbing every detail. Sarah's twin sister, Hannah, is gravely ill, I continued, the details providing the stark reality. Leukemia. They ran DNA tests for a bone marrow match. That's how Sarah learned David Peterson isn't her father. The timing. The documents. She suspected me. I paused, letting the information sink in. My assistant, Brenda, showed Sarah a video. A recording of Elaine, made years ago, hinting at a secret. That's the condensed version of how we got here. George, emboldened by the champagne and the unfolding narrative, rose from his seat. He stood tall, almost regal, for a man in a diner booth. DNA test be damned, he declared, his voice resonating with conviction. Look at her. She's a Miller, through and through. The spitting image of Carol at that age. Welcome to the family, Sarah. Welcome home. He extended a hand, and Sarah, still recording, reached out and clasped it. Sarah then lowered her phone, her voice soft but clear. Thank you, George. I've been searching for answers, for truth, my whole life without even realizing it. Coming here, meeting all of you, especially Carol. She glanced at Carol, who was openly weeping now, a hand over her mouth. The love she showed me, just now, without question, it means everything. A wave of emotion swept through the table. Bob Miller, Carol's husband, nodded, his eyes glistening. Even George, the stoic patriarch, visibly swallowed hard, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Eleanor, my mother, was openly crying. Silent tears tracing lines down her wrinkled cheeks. She held up 2 fingers, a gesture that needed no translation. Twins. The realization that there were 2 of them, 2 daughters, doubled the impact of the moment. Sarah took my phone. Can I put my number in here? And Hannah's? Of course, I said, a lump in my throat. She tapped quickly, adding the contacts. Then she turned to her own phone, composing a text message. I'm sending Hannah the video, she explained, her fingers flying across the screen, and telling her to watch the 6 o'clock news. The quiet logic of her actions, her focus on her sister's well-being, resonated deeply. Eleanor, still struggling to process the enormity of the discovery, managed to speak, her voice raspy. Do you have pictures, dear? Of both of you? Sarah nodded, retrieved her laptop from her bag, and opened it. Soon, a collage of photos of 2 identical young women filled the screen. Hannah and Sarah. Eleanor reached out, touching the screen gently, a mix of awe and sorrow on her face. The full, undeniable proof of a stolen lineage. Then, with a decisive gesture, Sarah turned off her phone. A small, almost imperceptible action, but it struck me. No one knew where she was. Not her mother. Not David Peterson. This realization, a quiet act of rebellion, solidified the break from her past. Just then, my own phone vibrated. A number I didn't recognize. I saw the incoming call and the name Hannah Peterson. My heart lurched. I stood, moving away from the table, seeking a moment of privacy. "Hannah," I said, my voice unexpectedly tight. "Dad?" The small, hopeful tremor in her voice was like a physical blow. I closed my eyes. A single tear, escaping. The impact of that word, spoken by my daughter, was profound. George, watching me from the table, saw my reaction. He looked at Sarah, who offered a small, knowing nod, a silent explanation that he immediately understood. "Yes, Hannah," I managed. "It's Art. Are you all right?" "I saw the video," she said. Her voice stronger now, less fragile. "And Sarah texted about the news. I can't believe it. I'm going to the police station now. They think Sarah's missing. I'll call you back after I sort things out here." "All right, Hannah," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'll be waiting. And I'll be there soon." I hung up, taking a moment to compose myself. This wasn't just about a reunion. It was about rectifying a profound injustice. I pulled out my phone again, my fingers moving decisively. It was time to call my lawyer. "Start the paperwork," I instructed, my voice firm. Paternity, parental rights, support, everything. The logical investigation had concluded. Now the legal battle would begin. The call to my lawyer had been direct, the instructions precise. My legal team, accustomed to handling complex litigation, immediately began drafting a petition for paternity and parental rights. The urgency was clear. Sarah and Hannah deserved immediate, unequivocal recognition. The machine was now fully engaged, moving with the cold, logical efficiency of legal procedure. 48 hours later, the DNA test results arrived. A single, embossed envelope, delivered by special courier. The document inside left no room for ambiguity. Art Miller was unequivocally confirmed as the biological father of Sarah and Hannah Peterson. The factual findings were now indisputable, providing the unshakable foundation for the legal strategy. I wasted no time. "Serve her," I instructed my lead attorney, Elaine Peterson. Today, the quiet moral tension that had simmered for nearly 2 decades had now erupted into concrete action. My attempts to contact Elaine directly were met with silence. Her calls went to voicemail, her texts unanswered. It was a familiar pattern of avoidance, a calculated disengagement. But this time, she couldn't hide indefinitely. The information I'd released, the detailed account of her past deceptions, and the fabricated FBI charges that led to my dismissal, had already begun to circulate. The news cycle, once a distant hum, was now a roaring engine of revelation. Local and regional outlets picked up the story, then national syndicates. Her carefully constructed public image, built on years of calculated charity work and social climbing, was crumbling. Her name, once associated with philanthropic endeavors, was now linked to terms like betrayal, fraud, and deception. The quiet moral judgment of the public was swift and brutal. A formal demand letter from my lawyers soon followed, outlining not just the intent to seek full parental rights, but also substantial financial restitution for the decades of deceit, the emotional distress inflicted upon Sarah and Hannah, and the loss of parental bonding time. Within hours, Elaine's lawyer, a sharp-suited woman named Miss Davies, contacted mine. The tone was guarded, conciliatory. "Mr. Miller," my lawyer relayed. "Miss Davies is suggesting a non-public settlement to avoid further embarrassment for all parties involved." "Reject it," I stated, without hesitation. "No private deal. I want full legal acknowledgement and a public apology. The truth deserves to be public, just as her lies were." The demand for a public apology was crucial. It wasn't about vengeance, but about justice. For Sarah, for Hannah, for the years of lost fatherhood. A meeting was eventually arranged. A neutral conference room, sparsely furnished, designed for dispassionate negotiation. Elaine sat across from me, her lawyer beside her. Her face was carefully composed, a mask of controlled indignation. Her hair, usually perfectly coiffed, seemed a shade less pristine. "Art," she began, her voice brittle. "This is absurd. You know David is Sarah and Hannah's father. This entire charade, this attack on my reputation, is beneath you." Her eyes, once so captivating, held a defensive glint. I remained silent, allowing my lawyer to place a copy of the DNA test results on the table between us. The official letterhead, the clear percentages, the unequivocal conclusion, black and white. Logical, irrefutable evidence. Elaine's eyes scanned the document. Her carefully constructed facade cracked. A tremor ran through her hands. Her lawyer, Miss Davies, picked up the paper, read it, and then placed it back down with a sigh, a quiet acknowledgement of defeat. Elaine was cornered. Her initial denials, so rehearsed, dissolved under the weight of the scientific proof. The color drained from her face. It was David," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "He was so insistent, so charming, and you were so rigid, so focused on your work. He promised me everything." The words tumbled out, a confession born of desperation, not remorse. "I was afraid, Art. Afraid of your influence. Afraid of what you'd do if you found out. David said he'd handle it. That he'd make sure you never knew." She paused, her gaze flitting around the room, avoiding mine. "He pressured me. He said we had to keep it a secret. For the girl's sake," he said. My lawyer then spoke, her voice calm but firm, outlining the legal implications. "Miss Peterson, your actions constitute fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and deliberate parental alienation. The legal ramifications are severe. Mr. Miller is prepared to pursue every available avenue to ensure full justice for his daughters." The cold facts, laid bare, painted a grim picture of Elaine's future. The legal papers served on Elaine Peterson soon reached David Peterson. Predictably, his reaction was one of indignant fury. My phone rang. It was David, his voice tight with controlled rage. "Miller," he snarled, "you're messing with my family, my daughters. I'll sue you for defamation, for harassment. You won't get away with this." The old familiar blend of arrogance and menace was back. My lawyer, already briefed, countered his threats with cold, hard facts. "Mr. Peterson," she informed his representative, "we have irrefutable DNA evidence. Furthermore, we have a documented history of your deliberate interference in Mr. Miller's life, including his unlawful dismissal from the FBI. Any legal action you pursue will only serve to publicly expose your own culpability in this long-standing deception." David's threats, once effective, now lacked any real power against the tide of truth. Still, David, ever concerned with his public image, tried to exert influence. He contacted Elaine, demanding she resist my legal claims. He feared the full extent of his involvement in the paternity deception would come to light, further tarnishing his carefully constructed reputation. Elaine, caught between David's pressure and the irrefutable evidence, became increasingly erratic. Then, Sarah called, her voice strained. "Art, Hannah's worse. The doctors say her condition is deteriorating rapidly. She needs that bone marrow transplant now. More than ever." The urgency in her voice cut through all other considerations. Hannah's health became the singular, overriding priority. I immediately instructed my legal team to expedite any and all legal processes that might enable my direct intervention. The complexities of the law suddenly seemed secondary to the fragile life hanging in the balance. I arranged for my medical information to be submitted to St. Jude's as a potential bone marrow donor. Time was a luxury Hannah didn't have. The logical path was clear. Move fast. Cut through red tape. The court, recognizing the critical nature of the situation, swiftly granted a temporary order. It allowed me to visit Hannah, provide my full medical history, and engage directly with her medical team. The legal system, for once, moved with uncharacteristic speed. My first visit to St. Jude's was a blur of sterile hallways and hushed voices. When I walked into Hannah's room, she was propped up in bed, looking frail but with the same fierce blue eyes as Sarah. She was thinner than in the photos, but the resemblance was still striking. Sarah was there, sitting by her bedside, holding her hand. "Hannah," I said, my voice thick with emotion, stepping closer. She looked up at me, a tentative smile gracing her lips. "Art," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. "It's really you. It's such a relief. I hoped you were my dad." I sat on the edge of her bed, taking her hand. It felt impossibly small and delicate. "I am, Hannah," I said, my voice breaking, "and I promise you, I'll do everything in my power to help you. Everything." The quiet moral tension of years evaporated in the face of her fragility. A few hours later, the hospital confirmed it. I was a preliminary bone marrow match for Hannah. Not perfect, but close enough to be a viable option. The news spread quickly among the medical staff, a flicker of hope in a dire situation. My legal team wasted no time. Hannah's critical condition became the centerpiece of an emergency motion, pressing for an accelerated court hearing on paternity. The argument was simple. Her life depended on my immediate legal recognition. David Peterson's subsequent attempts to block my involvement, citing his long-standing parental role, were swiftly dismissed by the court. The judge cited Hannah's medical urgency, prioritizing life over legal maneuvering. I began preparing for the comprehensive testing required to confirm the bone marrow match. The process was rigorous, demanding, but I faced it with a calm resolve. News of my potential donation to my newly discovered daughter became public, adding another layer to the unfolding drama. The story of betrayal and redemption, of a father stepping forward to save his child, captured widespread public interest. This wasn't just a legal case anymore. It was a human story, unfolding on a very public stage. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The emergency hearing convened with an air of profound gravity. The courtroom was packed, not just with legal professionals, but with a palpable presence of media and concerned citizens. The judge, a no-nonsense woman known for her efficiency, cut through the usual procedural delays. This was a matter of life and death, clearly. I presented the DNA evidence first, a stack of reports from multiple labs, all unequivocally confirming my paternity. Then came the medical reports from St. Jude's, detailing Hannah's rapidly worsening condition. Sarah testified, her voice clear despite the emotion, recounting her journey of discovery, the years of hidden truth, and her twin sister's desperate need. Her words painted a stark picture of deliberate deception and its devastating consequences. Elaine's lawyer, Mespria Davies, attempted to discredit me, suggesting I was opportunistically seizing a moment of vulnerability. She spoke of my past grievances and long-standing animosity towards Elaine, but against the cold, hard facts of DNA and medical urgency, her arguments were hollow. The evidence was overwhelming, a concrete wall against her rhetorical jabs. David Peterson, looking uncharacteristically subdued, took the stand. He tried to assert his role as a loving, protective father, describing years of care and support. He spoke of raising the girls, of being their dad in every practical sense. But when confronted with the DNA, with the scientific certainty of my biological connection, his testimony faltered. He couldn't counter the genetic truth, only the emotional attachment he claimed. The logic of his argument crumbled. The judge wasted little time in deliberation. Her ruling came swiftly, her voice firm and unequivocal. Based on the compelling DNA evidence and the urgent medical necessity, this court acknowledges Art Miller as the biological father of Sarah and Hannah Peterson. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom, followed by the rapid clicking of cameras. Furthermore, she continued, the court grants Mr. Miller temporary parental rights, specifically authorizing him to proceed immediately with the bone marrow donation for Hannah Peterson. Justice, long delayed, had finally delivered a clear, albeit temporary, verdict. Media outlets exploded with the news. Headlines screamed of the infidelity, the 2-decade deception, and the dramatic, 11th-hour discovery of a father. The story resonated deeply, a tale of personal betrayal playing out on a public stage. Public opinion, fueled by the stark facts and the raw emotion surrounding Hannah's illness, largely swung in favor of Art and the twins. Elaine and David became figures of public condemnation, their past actions scrutinized with fierce intensity. I gave a brief statement outside the courthouse, the cameras flashing incessantly. My voice was steady, calm, focusing on the core issues. My only concern is Hannah's health. The truth has come to light, and now my focus is on ensuring my daughter receives the life-saving treatment she needs. This is about family, and it's about justice. I offered no flourishes, no grand pronouncements, just the cold, hard facts of the situation. Elaine and David, stripped bare by the media glare, faced intensifying backlash. Rumors of investigations into David's past business dealings and his role in my FBI dismissal began to circulate, adding a layer of professional consequence to their personal shame. My family, the Millers, were a steady, unwavering source of support. Carol, George, Eleanor, and Bob publicly expressed their relief and their unwavering commitment to Sarah and Hannah. They are Millers, George stated in a local interview, his voice firm. And we stand by our own. I officially registered as Hannah's bone marrow donor. The preparatory medical procedures began immediately, a series of tests and consultations designed to ensure my health and the viability of the donation. The hospital moved with commendable speed, recognizing the critical window. A date was set for Hannah's bone marrow transplant. With me as the confirmed donor, a new sense of hope, fragile but real, permeated the sterile hospital environment. Sarah remained a constant presence by Hannah's side, drawing strength from my newfound presence and the collective support of our family. Away from the immediate urgency of the transplant, I reviewed my legal options with my team. Temporary parental rights were a start, but I aimed for permanent custody, and the matter of restitution, for the 2 decades of deceit and emotional suffering, was far from over. Elaine and David still had much to answer for. The bone marrow donation procedure was a blur of medical instructions, sterile environments, and a dull, persistent ache in my lower back. I approached it with a detached resolve, focusing on the mechanics, the simple act of providing what was needed. My body was merely a vessel for the solution. The process was efficient, clinical, and mercifully swift. Hannah received the transplant the same day. Initial reports from her medical team were cautiously optimistic. The procedure itself had been successful. The first hurdle cleared. I stayed close to the hospital, taking a room at a nearby hotel. My days were structured around visiting hours, consultations with Hannah's nurses and doctors, and reviewing every detail of her progress. I learned the subtle shifts in her vitals, the nuances of her medications. I became a logical investigator in her recovery, meticulously observing every data point. The Miller family rallied around us. Carol brought homemade meals. Eleanor knitted small blankets for Hannah. And George, despite his gruff exterior, was a constant, quiet presence. Bob handled logistical details, driving Sarah to appointments, running errands. Their support was a silent testament to the strength of family, a bedrock in the shifting sands of this new reality. Elaine and David, under immense public and legal pressure, eventually issued a joint public statement. It was a carefully worded document, acknowledging the court's ruling and expressing regret for any distress caused. There was no genuine apology, no hint of remorse, only a calculated capitulation to the legal mandate. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. Social media, news commentators, and letters to the editor universally condemned the statement as hollow and insincere. Their shallow acknowledgement only intensified the moral judgment against them. My legal team, unfazed by their insipid statement, formally initiated proceedings for full and permanent parental rights. This included not just custody, but also child support and restitution for the years of emotional and financial neglect. The previous court order was a temporary measure. This was about establishing a new, permanent foundation. My published account, the details of Elaine's deception and David's role in my FBI dismissal, gained renewed traction. The initial shock had given way to a deeper understanding, and the public wanted more of the factual narrative. The truth, once buried, now dominated the headlines. David Peterson began to face the professional repercussions he had so desperately tried to avoid. His past interference in my career, once a whispered rumor, was now a documented fact, impacting his business dealings and political aspirations. Contracts were quietly withdrawn. Partnerships dissolved. The cold, logical consequence of his actions finally caught up to him. Hannah, though still fragile, showed signs of improvement. Her color was better, her appetite slowly returning, but her doctors were clear. Recovery from a bone marrow transplant was a long, careful process, fraught with potential complications. It required patience, vigilance, and a steady hand. Sarah, meanwhile, started processing the emotional toll of years of deception. I saw her speaking with a hospital therapist, seeking resources to navigate the profound shock and lingering questions. Her strength was evident, but the scars were deep. I began planning for the twins' long-term future. Educational funds, medical trusts, and comprehensive financial support. It was not just about the present, but about ensuring they had every opportunity stolen from them by deceit. The logical investigator in me now focused on rebuilding, creating a secure foundation. My lawyers prepared for the second, more comprehensive court battle. This would be a fight for permanent parental rights, a legal affirmation of my daughter's place in my life, and my responsibility for their well-being. The cold realism of the situation settled in. The medical procedure was a success, a testament to hope and science. But the emotional scars, the 2 decades of betrayal, remained. The healing would be a longer, more complex process than any surgery. Weeks turned into months. The hospital room, once a place of anxious vigil, slowly became a space of cautious optimism. Hannah's medical team, after extensive monitoring and testing, confirmed the successful engraftment of the bone marrow. My cells had taken hold, beginning the slow, painstaking process of rebuilding her immune system. It was a critical milestone, a scientific triumph. The follow-up court hearing for permanent parental rights and child support was less a battle, more a formality. Elaine and David, facing the incontrovertible DNA evidence, the damning public opinion, and the weight of their own documented deceit, offered only token resistance. Their lawyer presented a brief, uninspired argument, clearly aware of the futility of their position. The logical investigation had left them no room to maneuver. The judge, the same one who had granted temporary rights, delivered her ruling with firm precision. The court hereby grants full legal and physical custody of Sarah and Hannah Peterson to Art Miller. A quiet, almost imperceptibly exhalation escaped my lips. Furthermore, she continued, Elaine Peterson and David Peterson are ordered to pay significant ongoing child support, as well as substantial backdated financial restitution, covering the past 2 decades of parental neglect and emotional distress. The numbers were considerable, a tangible measure of the harm inflicted. I chose to allow Sarah and Hannah to retain their surname, Peterson. It was a practical decision, acknowledging their history and the identity they had known for 2 decades. However, legally, they were now recognized as Millers, a reflection of their true lineage and their place within my family. The distinction was important, a balance between past and present. The process of integrating Sarah and Hannah into my home began with the same logical precision I applied to my work. My house, once a solitary space, was adapted. New rooms were prepared, routines established. It wasn't about sudden, effusive displays of emotion, but about providing a stable, secure environment. I prioritized their needs with a detached, practical approach, much like solving a complex case. I also ensured both Sarah and Hannah had access to comprehensive therapy resources. The emotional scars of years of deception ran deep, and I understood that healing required professional guidance. It wasn't a weakness, but a necessary step in their adjustment and recovery. Elaine and David's professional and social ostracization intensified. Their carefully curated lives unraveled under the weight of public condemnation. David Peterson, in particular, faced concrete consequences. Revelations of his past abuses of power, meticulously detailed in court documents and media reports, led to him being stripped of certain professional privileges. Business associations severed ties, and his once unassailable reputation dissolved. My story, the intricate details of discovery, medical urgency, and legal triumph, became a recurring feature in local and regional media. It served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the long-term, devastating consequences of deception and the relentless nature of truth. With the legal proceedings formally concluded, a sense of finality settled over the investigation. The facts were established, justice had been rendered, and a new chapter had begun. I, with logical precision, set up comprehensive trusts and educational funds for Sarah and Hannah. Their financial future was secured, their opportunities no longer dictated by the whims of deceit. My role as a father was new, a profound shift in my existence. While I embraced it, I maintained a detached, practical approach to this evolving family dynamic. Emotions were present, certainly, but they were expressed through actions, through diligent planning, and through a steadfast commitment to providing security and stability. The moral tension had found its resolution, replaced by the quiet, ongoing work of rebuilding and providing. Months gave way to a year, then two. Hannah's health steadily improved, a testament to the transplant and her own quiet resilience. The hospital visits became less frequent, then routine checkups. She gradually resumed a more normal life, attending school, re-engaging with friends, her fragility slowly replaced by the vibrant energy of youth. Sarah, with the financial and emotional support now firmly in place, began college. She pursued a degree in public health, a choice perhaps influenced by Hannah's illness, but also by a clear, renewed sense of purpose. She worked diligently, her focus unwavering, her gratitude for the stability evident in her quiet determination. I observed her progress, offering logical advice and resources when needed, but allowing her the space to forge her own path. My own life, once meticulously ordered, had adapted to the complexities of fatherhood. It wasn't about spontaneous emotional outbursts, but about quiet, deliberate actions. Adjusting my work schedule, ensuring school meetings were attended, planning for their future, these were the new parameters of my routine. I learned to anticipate needs, to provide stability without overt sentimentality. It was a practical, ongoing investigation into effective parenting. Elaine Peterson, stripped of her social standing and professional network, largely withdrew from public life. Her name, once synonymous with certain charity organizations, was now absent from their roles. Her carefully constructed world had crumbled, leaving her with little more than the public's judgment and the quiet shame of her actions. Her career, her social influence, were irrevocably damaged. David Peterson faced ongoing legal challenges. The revelations of his past abuses of power, meticulously documented by my legal team, led to continuous investigations and financial penalties. His assets were diminished, his professional reputation in tatters, He fought each battle with a weary desperation, but the tide had irrevocably turned. My relationship with Sarah and Hannah deepened, not through effusive declarations, but through consistent, honest support. We built a foundation on factual truth and logical trust. There were quiet conversations, shared meals, and the unspoken understanding that we were navigating uncharted territory together. The Miller family fully embraced Sarah and Hannah. Carol became a second mother figure, offering comfort and advice. George and Eleanor, their initial shock having transformed into a deep familial love, welcomed them without reservation. It was a stable, if subtly reserved, extended family unit, bound by blood and shared experience. I even found myself revisiting that convoluted copyright issue from the day Sarah first walked into my office. The bureaucratic inefficiency that had bothered me then now seemed a trivial concern, a small eddy in the vast current of life. The contrast between my initial professional life and the profound personal upheaval I'd experienced was stark, a reminder of how quickly life could change course. The public maintained a critical view of Elaine and David. The media, through ongoing commentary and retrospective pieces, ensured their deception was not forgotten. It served as a persistent undercurrent, a constant reminder of the consequences of their choices. I observed Sarah and Hannah develop, noting their unique personalities. Hannah, still recovering, displayed a quiet strength and a newfound appreciation for life's simple pleasures. Sarah, the initial seeker of truth, grew into a confident young woman, unafraid to challenge assumptions. Their sense of security, once fractured, was slowly but surely solidifying. My focus remained on the practical aspects of parenting. Academic progress, regular medical checkups for Hannah, and the careful scheduling that ensured their lives ran smoothly. It was a methodical approach, ensuring their needs were met with precision and foresight. Sarah and Hannah, for their part, found solace and strength in their shared history. They leaned on each other, two young women who had endured a profound deception and emerged stronger. Their bond was a testament to their resilience, a quiet strength born from adversity. I often considered the long-term impact of their past. The journey of healing, I knew, was ongoing. The scars remained, a quiet testament to the betrayal. But now, they were scars that could be openly acknowledged, understood, and slowly, carefully healed. The new family dynamic operated with an understated efficiency, a reflection of my logical approach to life, tempered now by the deep, quiet current of fatherhood. Hannah's journey to full health continued its steady arc. Her laughter, once a foreign sound in my house, became a natural part of its rhythm. Sarah thrived in her college environment, her future plans solidifying with a clarity that pleased me. My own routines, while still structured, had absorbed the necessary adjustments. Fatherhood, I found, was another complex case, demanding consistent attention to detail, logical problem-solving, and a detached but resolute commitment. Elaine and David's public lives remained shattered, their names permanently etched in the annals of local infamy. Their silence was a confession, their ruin a self-inflicted consequence. They were distant echoes, their power to harm now diminished to zero, replaced by the weight of public and personal judgment. The Miller family remained a constant, steady anchor for the twins. Gatherings were quieter now, imbued with a deeper sense of connection that transcended words. The quiet hum of my home, once solitary, now carried the distinct, welcome sounds of my daughters' lives, their conversations, their music, the rustle of their presence. The betrayal had set in motion a chain of profound consequences. It had stripped away a comfortable past, exposed a network of lies, and forced me into an unforeseen future. But it also birthed a family, rescued a life, and brought a stark, undeniable truth to light. The path to equilibrium was long, and the scars of the past would always remain. They served as enduring reminders of choices made, lives altered, and the persistent, unyielding power of the truth. My emotional landscape, once barren of direct paternal connection, now held a steady, purposeful current. The narrative of our lives, once twisted by lies, now unfolded with the stark, often challenging, clarity of truth. Elaine's betrayal, 2 decades in the making, left a lasting imprint on every life it touched. Her social and professional standing became an inescapable ruin, a public monument to her deceit. David Peterson's carefully constructed influence crumbled, his past abuses of power permanently staining his legacy. Their calculated choices, once hidden, now stood exposed, demanding a public accounting that stripped them of future comfort and respect. For Sarah and Hannah, the consequences were profound and ongoing. They carried the knowledge of a stolen history, the indelible mark of a family built on a lie. While their health stabilized and their lives found new purpose, the process of healing remained. Their future, now secure, was forever shaped by the trauma of their past. My own life, irrevocably altered, shifted from solitary precision to the complex, fulfilling demands of fatherhood. The quiet moral tension of the truth, once a burden, had finally brought clarity, if not complete peace. The journey continued, a testament to the persistent fallout of one woman's profound and costly deception.